It's a bit last minute, but I think I'm going to vlog my week.
Once again, the news were talking about Harry and Meghan leaving the royal family. But they're not leaving the royal family, are they, really? It's basically almost a pseudo-resignation. All I could think of was, this is why people shouldn't work with families. Danny recently left Cimarelli. It's happened with the Kardashians and Kourtney wanting to leave all of last season. I didn't watch it. I don't know whether they sacked her. My sister had it on one day. We watched it. We grew bored. We switched over and watched Bob's Burgers. There was one journalist this morning who was clearly upset that people on Twitter were scrutinising the UK media and blaming them for Harry and Meghan choosing to take a step back. Well, once again, everyone's trying to blame Meghan for it, for unknown reasons, really. He is the one who made the choice. It's just one way they can do this whole Wallace Simpson type narrative, isn't it, really? Most celebrities like to take a step back from the spotlight when they've had children, and most of the time they are allowed. And with this woman saying wherever they go in the world, there will always be a spotlight on them, it felt more like a threat from journalists, because I don't want to be funny. When do Harry and Meghan regularly do stuff that's newsworthy? Why do you need a photograph of their baby that they don't want you to have? We respect you by not publishing them. That's not respect. Leave them alone. And that's my 2 cents on it. I've driven to work. First roundabout, someone tried to kill me. Basically, they decided to come around the roundabout, but were going too fast so as they could overtake me, but forgot that they were driving one of those really big Ford vans. And because of that, they were on my side of the road, just going, like, coasting along in the middle. And I didn't have to press on the horn at all, but I did think he was going to veer straight into me. And then I think he hadn't actually noticed that there were 2 cars on the road and that I was one of them. I considered overtaking him myself because he was going inordinately slow, but I didn't want to risk it in case he thought I was racing him and tried something similar further down the line. I then ended up stuck behind a lorry. Very brave cyclist this morning. I wondered why all of the traffic had slowed down, and it was because of this cyclist and this lorry driver having to avoid crashing into the cyclist, who wasn't paying attention to the fact that there was in fact a rather big lorry on the road. I should also point out about the Ford van. I followed that for quite a long way before it turned off into a farm, who, if it's the farmer, he's my father's friend, and if he's not the farmer, he's delivering to my farmer's friend. So my father's friend. I don't own a farmer. I have to get all of this anger out about certain drivers this morning. I have to do it now. Another driver was turning right into a road as you come into Poynton, and another driver wanted to turn onto the main road. So I slowed down and flashed them, meaning for the black car to come out in front of the little Mini that wanted to turn right into this lane, and then the Mini could go after it and everything would be fine. But for whatever reason, the Mini chose to turn right into the road, and that meant that the black car was still stuck in the position and nothing was letting that out. And I can't slow up all of the traffic just for one black car. So then I look like an idiot. The black car thinks I'm being mean and horrible, and he's about to have a very sad work day indeed. I read some more of The Binding last night. I'm now over the 200-page mark. I don't hold it to such esteem as everyone else does. The characters don't linger in my head, but I do want to be done with the story now. I might read some of the book whilst I'm at work before anyone gets here, as opposed to listening to the audiobook that I would usually listen to, which at the moment is Masquerade by Terry Pratchett. This is a good book if you primarily read young adult literature and want to get into adult literature, because I do feel that with the characters' ages and the story, it would work as a young adult historical fantasy novel that isn't too hard on the fantasy. Indeed, it's not that hard historically to get to grips with everything. Sometimes I have wondered just what era it's supposed to be set in, as there do seem to be a few anachronisms within the text. I will admit to being particularly thrilled by the farm scenes and the mention of certain farm terminology, because as we know, I am the son of a farmer, and there is something within the story there that resonates with me in having this farmer's son be sent off to work elsewhere due to the fact that they've proven to be somewhat useless on the farm. Naturally, that's not what happened with me. What happened with me was that I just preferred books to farming, and I realised that I didn't actually like getting dirty hands, and I'd often return home having gone somewhere with my dad, and I didn't like all of the dirt and I couldn't cope with it. Farming wasn't for me. And obviously there's always this feeling of disappointing your parents by not going into the industry that they lived with and that generation before them did. In fact, I don't actually know how far back farming goes in my family, but that is a whole other story. That part of the book did resonate with me at first, with everything that he's going through. I don't think that the book is badly written. I find it accessible. It's a quick book that doesn't take too much mental effort, I think. And I think that my reading it, as I have been doing, is meaning that I'm slowly coming out of this reading slump. Had I not been in a reading slump, would I have enjoyed this book more? I don't know. I couldn't possibly comment on that one. I am going to go inside. I'm going to get a bit of reading done, and then I will probably catch up with you tomorrow.
It's Tuesday. I've just returned from Holmes Chapel Library, where I read from Doris Ahoy and introduced the world to Alice Valentine, well, Holmes Chapel's book group, but the first 3 pages seemed to go down well. It was their book group that meets every other Tuesday. I'm very grateful to Mike, Marie and Sylvia, who introduced me and allowed me to share my works with people and disrupt their book group for the hour this afternoon. It was mentioned that it had been a while since I last went to Holmes Chapel Library. Indeed, it was in autumn 2017 when I first released Indisputably Doris, and as we know, I took a break from going around and doing events, which now, a few years later, I am beginning to regret, because basically it's 2 years where I haven't done events and I haven't shared my work and been allowing my books to fester, and not a lot of people have been knowing about them. And to then go back and now say, look, I've got another 3 books here, when most people might only know about the one, it's not the best marketing strategy. It's just not the way things should be done, and there were things that I could have perhaps gone and introduced myself more to writers, and considering it's not that far away, I am disappointed with myself for throwing my toys out of the pram and not going and doing more events over the last few years, especially because I received my PLR statement from the British Library this morning. And for those who didn't know, when you borrow a book from the library, a fund is in place, so a certain amount of money is put aside for that author from each book that is borrowed and for each borrow. And in 2017 to 2018, my books were borrowed from British libraries 572 times. Between 2018 and 2019, that dropped down to 10. This is a huge decrease in numbers, and I do believe that it comes from me not doing a lot of events, and also just a lack of any publicity about who I am. And even though I maybe didn't want to go and do readings and that sort of event, there were loads of other places I could have maybe inserted myself. As Willem says when he's talking to those twins, if there isn't a niche there for you, create that niche and fill it. And I really wish that I had been exercising that knowledge a lot longer than I have been, because for some people it was the first time they were hearing of me. I did see a few new people there, and for the most part it went well. People laughed where they were supposed to laugh, and then we discussed their books that they brought as well. There were a lot more people than I expected to be there, which is always great, and the fact that I hadn't been more often did upset me, I think, more than anybody else, because I really think that I should have done more. And we all know I should have done more. There's no hiding that, but In 2018, I was working on An Heir to Murder, and I was working on the children's book, and I didn't finish the children's book. I finished An Heir to Murder, but that's been allowed to languish for nearly 18 months, if not longer, since I finished it. And we've had Doris Ahoy since then, but Doris Ahoy came out in September, and even Mike, the librarian, said to me, isn't this a bit late when you've got another book coming out next month? And yes, Mike, you are correct. I should have been doing more, and I haven't been. And now I regret it. So Tuesday is a day of regrets, and I still have to email the writers group. I'm failing there as well because I was supposed to have a rota in place by now, and I don't know whether I created a rota, whether there is a rota. Luckily, the committee have been smart and sent me a message to say who's in charge this week, and I'll just have to work out what's happening on Thursday for the rest of this year. A lot of ideas in my head today about how I could further my career as a writer, and everybody knows that I want to write full-time. Do I want to write full-time? I want to be known as a writer more than a charity shop assistant. What have I done to achieve that goal in the last 2 years? I might have written books, I might have written poetry, but what have I got to show for it? Every single poem I put out last year, bar one, got rejected. I got rejected by every magazine I submitted to, and I don't talk about that often on here, but I was submitting stuff every week. At the start of this year, I got a message rejecting a poem that I sent out in May, and that was the final one that I had to get rejected. I did get a poem shortlisted for a prize last year, which was the York Mixed Literature Festival prize. I got one in Butcher's Dog, as I've shown, but I just feel like I haven't done enough, and I'm really cursing past Charlie now for allowing his awkwardness and the tiniest bit of sadness get in the way of furthering his career. I only have 120 pages left of The Binding by Bridget Collins. I can tell you that this is not a new favourite book. In fact, whilst I was reading it earlier, I wished that I'd waited for it to come into the charity shop. I wished that I had waited and bought it in paperback, because I don't enjoy this book as much as everybody else has done. I wish that it had been written differently. I think that the author was holding back. There are possible spoilers ahead, so if you don't want them, I don't know what you're going to do. But basically, as soon as they introduced a dog, I knew what was going to happen. As soon as Lucien was introduced in the first part, I knew how that story was going to go. And I feel as though this story has hit every single beat that many other stories have done in the past. It hasn't surprised me at all. Frankly, the tiny bit of magic that's in here does nothing for me. It doesn't improve the story or give me a new twist on the story at all. It's a good book. It's well written. There are some nice descriptions in here, but other than that, not a favourite. And once I finished it, I can't honestly say that it's a book that I would ever go back to. And that is sad, because I had looked forward to this book immensely. Plans for today are now to go online and send a message to the writers group to say what's happening this week, to write up what I have written for Doris. I was looking for some paperwork this morning and came across a notebook in which I was reading stuff, and it was Doris related, and then I realised it was from when I started writing this final Doris book, and it's been that long that I'd forgotten that that's what had happened, and we're still in the first chapter. Granted, that is about 10,000 words ago now, but I wish I was writing more, and I wish I had more of an output. And then once I've done that, I'm going to finish reading The Binding. I haven't decided what I'm going to read afterwards. I'll probably see you tomorrow morning. I just recorded a video saying why I ended up not enjoying The Binding, but for the most part, never going to enjoy this book because it had an amnesia plot in order to add something different to the story, and I don't like amnesia plots. Never have, never will. So now I am reading James Acaster's classic Scrapes. I only have 100 pages left. It's a very fast read. It's comedic, and it's just little vignettes about the comedian's life. Nothing to write home about, but if you like the comedian, you'll probably enjoy hearing more about his life. So I'm going to finish that one today. Then I've got the staff meeting, as I've said about, going out for drinks with work, then coming back to Mac for Poems and Pints at the Button Warehouse, where I'm also hoping to see whether they would mind hosting a launch for An Heir to Murder. I should also probably find some poetry to read at that thing. But luckily, I've kept this clip shorter than the other days. I've actually been questioning what I want to read upon finishing the James Acaster book, because I do have The Thirst by Jo Nesbo and A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. Both of them I have started, and I am looking to finish all the books that I have started reading before I move on. But there is a book calling to me on my shelves, so we'll see. I'll probably fill you in tomorrow.
I am working with a very limited time to record. For the first time since I started working here, I ended up not waking up until 7:45. To illustrate, that is usually the time at the latest I am leaving my house. Admittedly, I've still arrived to work half an hour early, but the anxiety about being late was definitely there. If we're being completely honest, I wasn't sleeping last night, and the last time I checked the clock, it was about 3:30. And usually when I don't sleep and I can't sleep no matter what I try, there's usually a chance that I am going to be catching something, coming down with something. My brother has had a cold, we could be having another cold. I will see, I will find out. But then I'm awoken at 7:45 by my father screaming, "You're not at work, Charlie!" And I'm like, apparently he tried calling me twice before, but it hadn't worked. And honestly, this is a new thing that's happened ever since I started closing my door earlier late last year now, because I always used to keep it open because I'm not a fan of confined spaces and the idea of being locked in. And then one day I happened to close it and it was a whole new world open to me. I wasn't now hearing every single little sound, which wasn't good this morning because now I'm not late, but late for me. It is Friday, so on Wednesday, during the staff meeting, my colleague said that they'd cancelled going out for drinks that night and moved it to this week, which had been the person whose birthday we were going out for. It had been their idea because it meant that I didn't have to rush back to Mac to do Poems and Pints, and we'd be able to have a proper night of it. That meant I did just have Poems and Pints, which worked out okay. I got home about 5:10 from the staff meeting, which was okay. Had some tea and then went out for Poems and Pints at the Button Warehouse. It was a great night. Everybody had fun. We read some poetry, we drank some drinks, and I have arranged the launch for An Heir to Murder, which will now be taking place on the 12th of February at 7 o'clock until 9:30 at the Button Warehouse in Macclesfield. And it's going to be a very relaxed sort of launch party, something completely different to the way we've done it before. I invite anyone who's in the area to come and buy some drinks and read some books. Well, you won't be reading any books. Buy some books. Support your local indie author, or just this indie author. I finished reading James Acaster's classic Scrapes yesterday morning, and then I happened to look on the back and saw that this book would cost $9.99, and immediately was frustrated because half of this stuff is recycled material anyway, which you come to expect. I imagine the entire book is actually full of anecdotes he has also told on the radio, and this is for people who are fans of his, similar to when Simon Mayo released those letters from his TV show where people had admitted to secrets they had. I did find the anecdotes funny. However, as someone told me that I was going to be paying £10 for this book, that never would have happened. Then I have started a buddy read with Abby of Abby Mac Reads. We are reading Nevernight. Only the first day in, we said we'd read 3 chapters, see how we felt about the book. I still think that 3 chapters in, it's a lot of setup, but it's okay. We're getting a lot of the world building here, different style of narrator. People love this book, and at the moment I don't hate it. But that's me. Today I am in work until 5, and I will probably get home between 5:30 and 5:45, and then I will do this all again tomorrow. I'm putting yesterday up there with one of my worst days in terms of insomnia, and so I'd made this decision that last night I wasn't going to have any sort of caffeinated beverages, and turned away from the phone and just started reading about 8 o'clock, turned off the computer. And so I'm sorry I didn't watch much booktube at all last night. Once again, I'll say it, if you have a video and I've missed it and I haven't commented, do get in touch. tell me what you want me to watch in the comments and I will do so. In terms of bad days for retail, we don't have many volunteers on a Friday, so due to that, it ended up being somewhat more hectic than usual when one of our volunteers had to phone in ill. That meant I spent the entire day on the till, but that doesn't stop the amount of donations we're getting through the door. And so we have quite a bit of a backlog of them to get through today, although my manager and another volunteer did do their best to get through them all. Today, I am supposed to be going to my friend's birthday drinks party type thing. I'm 27 and I have yet to go to anything of this ilk. I'm one of those people who does tend to avoid social situations, and being somewhat agoraphobic, it doesn't do well for me in those sorts of situations. However, I have said I would go, so I feel like I ought to. And last week I did say that I'd be building up to go all week and then just get too nervous on the day. However, you know, it's in a location that I've been to before and it's only a friend. I should be doing that tonight, and if I do, I'll probably tell you about it. Unfortunately, Abby of Abby McReed's is ill at the moment, and therefore we've not put off our buddy read, but we've decided that we're going to read until chapter 6 of Nevernight and then discuss that on Monday, which gave me some more free time, and I started reading A Single Thread by Tracy Chevalier last night. I've read 90 pages very quickly, and that's yet another reason I was considering not going to this birthday thing tonight, just so that I could stay home and read. I'm aware that A Single Thread isn't doing anything new so far. It is a story that is currently set in 1932, and this young woman, Violet, has moved to Winchester, where she wants to join the Broderers group, who are creating new kneelers and cushions for the cathedral. This could easily be a People's Friend story. There are many historical fiction books that I think would do something similar. They are often categorized as women's fiction. They'll have a stock photo of a nurse or someone from the army with very slightly muddied up cheeks on the cover, you know, land girls, that sort of thing. And I feel like this is very similar to those books, but because of the author, it has been categorized differently. This isn't me shooting down Tracy Chevalier. I feel like the book is palatable, it's accessible. I don't think it's doing anything new or different. What I've particularly liked about the book is that it's reminded me of not necessarily my grandmother's generation, but her mother's generation. And as we know, my nan's mum was still alive, my great-grandmother was still alive up until I was 8 years old, and she still had sisters. I know of that era and the type of women that this book is discussing, and my nan still tells stories of the type of women that are within this book. And so there's this sense of nostalgia about the book that makes me like it more. It's still not doing anything new, anything different. But at the same time, I've been questioning how I make this decision of what I like and what I dislike in literature, when neither of the books this week has done anything new, and yet I could rush through the Tracy Chevalier and really end up enjoying it and telling everyone to read it, as opposed to the binding that I haven't enjoyed. I said why it would never have been a book for me. I have driven the entire way to work with the door open. I got down to my car this morning, unlocked it, and the doors wasn't open. And my car was parked at the bottom of the road, so I wasn't happy about having to walk back up an icy road in order that I may get some hot water to pour over my doors and my windows. Then I realised that whilst my car had illuminated and unlocked, it had only unlocked partially. Therefore, I ended up pressing my key again and the doors opened. However, I forgot that I'd tried to open my passenger door, so whilst I was going 70 miles down the dual carriageway, I noticed that the light above my head was on and the light saying that a door was open was on, which also made sense when I could hear really loud rumbling noises, because that was clearly my car on the road. And fast forward to me thinking, well, I can't open my door here, which, you know, shows growth, because 20 years ago, 7-year-old Charlie would have just grabbed that door handle and left it flinging and flying everywhere, all over the dual carriageway. I thought, well, I'm coming up to a roundabout, so I'll stop there. I couldn't stop at the roundabout because it was clear couldn't stop at the traffic lights, they were on green. Next set of traffic lights was slowing down to stop, and as we approached them, they changed to green, so I didn't have the opportunity to just lean across, slam it shut, sort everything out. But, you know, the door didn't fly open whilst I was going around anywhere, which was my biggest worry. And I think that everyone needed the culture of Marina singing. I can't remember what she was singing this morning, but it's her latest album, Love and Fear. And I think that basically everybody around these parts could do with hearing her. So while she might have been blaring out of an open car door on a Saturday morning when they all wanted to lie in, they needed it. Working now until 5, then back home, make tea, and probably disappear off to a friend's birthday, drinks, party, DJ style thing. I have no idea what to call it. I have no idea how these things work. I have no idea what's socially acceptable to stay at these things. I don't know the length of time. We'll see how it goes. Last time I went out drinking and it was just the two of us. I didn't get home until 12:30, but now it's an entire party of people, and so I may be back home by 9. My father was very disappointed to hear I was going out drinking because he thought that I'd missed The Voice. It's not like it's not going to be shown again, and also if you watch it the day after, you get rid of all the adverts, all the unnecessary sobbing and sob stories, that sort of thing. It's not that I don't have a heart, it's just that I don't. Anyway, I am going to disappear. I hope that this vlog hasn't been too tiresome. I should just point out, whilst I said I should get more events, I haven't booked any more events. So that'll be the object of this week, is to get more events, get out there, and actually find the rota for the writers group. That'd be a good thing. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.